Welcome to Tactical Truths, the playlist where we bring you the latest military news, tactical analysis and stories that matter most to our community. Hit subscribe and join us for sharp insights and frontline perspectives. I'm Phil Campion, former UK SAS, and this is the Tactical Truth. Welcome to the Tactical Truths. This week we're going to be looking at the war between Ukraine and Russia. The whole world would like this to finish. We'd like to see an end to it. I think that goes without saying. Even both countries involved are probably, if the truth be known, looking for a way out. To get a way out, both sides have got to be happy. It's a business transaction. How are you going to get that to work? Well, the Russians need a credible way to step down. Putin's not just going to jump off and go, right, that's enough, I've had enough. He's not just going to throw his hands in the air and say, you keep this and I'll be on my way. Zelenskyy has been fighting, has put a lot of time, effort and money, not to mention the amount of people that have lost their lives, into saving something that now he's being asked to give a part of away. How does that work? Well, there is a kind of solution in the offing, and we've been looking at Sky News' interview with Ramsey, although I don't think Ramsey was probably the best person to have conducted this interview. His knowledge is limited, in my opinion, but there you go. Ramsey's got to speak to the big fella himself, Zelenskyy, and he's debriefed him a little bit. And let's have a look at it. Let's have a butcher's at it and see how it went. But there is kind of an off-ramp as far as Zelenskyy's concerned. Will it work? Will the Russians buy it? Will the rest of the world buy it? Let's have a look.
We begin this hour with breaking news. Volodymyr Zelenskyy has suggested that he's prepared to give up some parts of Ukraine to Russia for the time being, so long as there is a ceasefire and his country is given NATO membership.
There you go. The NATO membership is key to this, because if he gets NATO membership, the Russians are going to think twice about jumping into his country. But you could argue that this whole thing has been created from the fact that the Ukrainians were told they're not to have NATO membership by the Russians because the Russians want a buffer zone between themselves and a neighbouring country being NATO. They don't want their neighbouring country to be part of NATO. So that's a bone of contention from the very off. But let's see if this can work. Let's have a look.
The Ukrainian president was speaking to our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, in his first interview with the UK media since Donald Trump's election win. Mr. Trump has vowed to end the war in Ukraine and boasted that he could do so within 24 hours of coming to power.
Right, Trump. That is. If you could do that, I'm gonna do a whole show just dedicated to how great you are. Okay, I don't think you can do it in 24 hours. There you go. Big Phil's challenged out Trump right there. You don't do it in 24 hours. I think you can probably do it, but I don't think you do it in 24 hours. How about that? There you go. The gauntlet has been thrown to you, Mr. Trump.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak live to Stuart Ramsey in Kyiv, as well as getting international reaction. But first, let's hear what President Zelenskyy had to say.
Right. Let's cut to the chase. Let's get away from Trump and let's see what Zelenskyy's got to say about this proposal, which could or could not work.
Well, one alternative, perhaps, again, this is reported from the United States, and it's fairly simple, really, is that Ukraine joins NATO, but Russia takes control and keeps the land that it has to date.
Right, that question straight away, looking at it, you can't offer Ukraine membership to NATO that say part of your country is not going to be included. You've got to offer it as a whole and then decide what's going to happen with that piece of land afterwards. I would have thought. And this is what I said about Ramsey. He don't understand everything, does he? He just don't understand.
Would that be a possibility?
Ніхто не пропонував нам бути в НАТО.
No one has offered us to be in NATO with just one part or another part of Ukraine.
There you go. So exactly what I've just said there. No one's going to offer him just NATO in one part or another, are they? Oh, there you go. You can have it in Kyiv, but you can't have it there. You've got to give it to the whole thing, haven't you?
That's for once.
Fact.
The fact is that it is a solution to stop the hot stage of the war. because we can just give the NATO membership to the part of Ukraine that is under our control.
Факт, можна було б, ніхто не пропонував.
Yes, it could be possible, but no one offered.
Треба робити
But the invitation must be given to Ukraine within its internationally recognized border.
There you go. So you've got to offer it to them, their whole thing. You've got to offer it to Ukraine as a whole. You can't just say, right, we'll give it to the bits that aren't occupied by Russia at the moment, or else you'll just sort of like, it just don't work, does it?
не можете давати тільки частині.
You can't give invitation to just one part of a country. Why? Because thus you would recognize that Ukraine is only that territory of Ukraine and the other one is Russia.
Тому я і сказав,
There you go, exactly. I thought Ramsey would have got that, to be fair.
юридично ми не маємо права
So legally, by law, we have no right to recognize the occupied territory as territory of Russia.
І тут не можна помилятись.
And here we must not make any mistake.
You're right. You can't be making mistakes with this stuff. It's got to be clear. It's got to be black and white from the very off, and therefore you have to get it right from the very off.
Гарячу стадію війни.
But if we want to stop the hot stage of the war,
зонтик, амбрелу,
we should take under NATO umbrella the territory of Ukraine that we have under our control.
швидко. А далі вже
That's what we need to do fast. And then Ukraine can get back the other part of its territory diplomatically.
There you go. So he's saying, give it to us as a whole, and then we can negotiate about all the other stuff and give, concede, take, keep, whatever it is that makes it work. But you've got to give that NATO umbrella first, because without the NATO umbrella, I don't see that there can be too much of a ceasefire.
ось що я сказав, що таку пропозицію
So, and this proposal has never been considered by Ukraine because no one has ever offered that to us officially.
не запропонував. Юридично
We can't, by law, recognize our territory, Ukrainian territory, under occupation of Russia as Russian. That is impossible. That is against the constitution of Ukraine.
Конституцію України.
I understand completely your position.
He does now. Now he's been told categorically by the big man himself.
It is interesting, though, because it seems to me you have moved to a point that if you could get your NATO membership, you would have accept that we could be moving into a ceasefire and potential.
I don't think you can move into a ceasefire without the NATO membership. Without the NATO membership, he has no clout, he has no real weight, and that's why the Russians are in there in the first place. The Russians haven't run into Poland, have they? No. Why not? Because Poland's part of NATO. And if they do, the whole of NATO will stand up and say, no, we're not having that. He doesn't have that at the moment, and that's what he needs.
Talks, peace talks. And at some point in the future, you would consider diplomatically how to get your land back.
Not just how to get it back, he's going to have to consider, he can't consider how to get it back completely because the Russians aren't just going to say, right, you're having all that. He's going to have to consider how he can negotiate what's left for the best of everybody. That's what he's going to have to do, I think. Because the Russians aren't just going to walk, especially if he gets NATO, that will quell the fighting. If he gets accepted by NATO and made a member state, that will quell the fighting for them. But the Russians are not going to be happy that they've just got, and that could back them into a very dangerous corner. That could back them into an irreversible corner where they go, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just have to go for broke. And going for broke, we know what that means, don't we?
That's quite a big step, because you're never going to accept that it's Russia's, but as you say, physically they will hold it. But it could bring the war to a close.
A lot of different countries proposed a ceasefire. So the question is, ceasefire where? That is the question. The second point is, if we speak ceasefire, guarantees that Putin will not come back.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing he's got to look at here. It's all right, like he says, negotiating a ceasefire if you can, you know. But unless he's got that NATO membership, unless he's got that stamp in the book, it ain't guaranteed to last for 5 minutes, is it? Because the Russians can just we'll have it. No, we'll go again. Do you know what I mean? We can't have that. If they're going to resolve this, both sides have got to be happy, and I would suggest that some of the Ukrainian territory is going to have to go to Russia. I don't know how they're going to negotiate that, whether they're going to have to negotiate it after the borders have been declared NATO's and all that sort of stuff. It's a difficult one still. So I don't think this is as clear a solution as perhaps people, or perhaps as Ramsey thinks it is.
And in this case, I commented you about NATO. Yes, NATO immediately the part of Ukraine. And we need it very much. Otherwise, he will come back. Otherwise, how we can go to ceasefire? So it's
no NATO, no ceasefire. It's as simple as that.
Very, for us, it's very dangerous. That's what I mean.
Let's just summarise this. It would be lovely to see an end to the hostilities in that region. But to do so, there has to be meaningful negotiation. And there has to be rules and boundaries put in place that people understand, that can be policed and can be adhered to. All right? Now, Putin's not just going to walk away from this. He needs an off-ramp. He needs to keep part of that land that he's taken, or I don't think he'll go. So Zelenskyy's going to have to realise that if he gets this NATO membership, whether it encompasses everything to start with, or whether indeed they do say, right, we'll cut that bit away and encompass this. Constitutions can be changed, all right? They can be changed. They can be worked upon. This is why I don't think Mr. Trump's got a hope in hell of getting this done in 24 hours. If he can, he really is a salesman, all right? But hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is stuff that can be negotiated. And I think personally that this isn't over right now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel slightly if people play ball. If they don't, it could go on forever. But if they do, we could see an end to hostilities there permanently if Ukraine become part of this NATO body. That was the tactical truth. And as I've said before, if you've got anything you'd like me to talk about, anything you'd like me to showcase, let us know. You know where? Have a look below.